before the Honorable Judge Makume in Court 8F in the inquest of late Dr. Neil Aggett, case number 2019/445.
As a court pleases, my Lord, I appear on behalf of the state in this matter with my colleague Advocate Singh.
Thank you.
Yes. For the record, my Lord, my name is spelled, my surname is spelled as follows: MLOTSHWA.
TSHWA, yes, I've got that.
Thank you, my Lord.
May it please the court. My Lord, I appear on behalf of the Aggett family, together with my donor juniors, Mr. Ty Scott and Ms. Nasima Fakir.
What's the other surname?
That's Ty Scott, so Thai.
I've got that.
And Scott, SCOTT.
Yes.
Nasima, NASEEMA. Fakir, FAKIR.
Yes.
And my Lord, we are instructed by Moray Hathorn, that's MORAY HATHORN, of the Pro Bono Department of Weber Bensel Attorneys.
Thank you. And your surname is Howard Vani. I take that.
Correct.
Thank you.
My Lord, my surname is Coetzee, COETZEE. I'm instructed by Mr. Minnar, NINNAR, who acts as the correspondent for the Johannesburg State Attorney's Office. We act on behalf of implicated members of the South African Police Service. At this stage, identified as Mr. Gittlers. Should there be other implicated persons during the inquest, we will be approached. If we can assist them, we will, depending on whether there's a conflict of interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies. Just for the record purposes, as indicated by counsel, this is the reopening of the inquest of the late Dr. Neil Aggett. The background facts briefly are the following, which led to the reopening of this inquest. Dr. Neil Aggett was in the custody of the South African Police at John Foster Square Police Station in Johannesburg on or about the 5th of February 1982. Subsequent thereto, an inquest was held in terms of the Inquest Act of 1959. A finding was made by the then magistrate or presiding officer, I'm not certain who said in that matter. That finding was made on the 30th of December 1982 to the effect that no one was to blame for the death. That finding was not acceptable to the family, and as it is their belief that the truth was not told and has not as yet been told. As a result, representations were then made to the minister as well as to the prosecuting authority. The newly appointed Minister of Justice issued a directive on the 15th of August last year, 2019, that ordering or directing the Judge President of this division, Judge President Mlambo, to appoint a judge of this division to preside over the reopened inquest in terms of Section 17A1 of the Inquest Act number 58 of 1959. I was therefore then appointed to hear this. It is common knowledge that persons will be giving evidence in this matter, in this hearing, who may very well be implicated. They have the right to be represented if they have a belief that they may very well be implicated. People from the media have also made application to me to cover this hearing. I have granted the permission and I've satisfied myself that there are no other people who have objected towards the coverage of this hearing. However, there are certain conduct rules and directives which were issued by the Judge President. I'll hand out copies of the directives so that media should know what and what not to do. They are not intrusive. They are not meant to prohibit you from doing anything, but certain conduct in court not to disturb the witnesses when they're giving evidence. So the document is there. You can read it at your own time, and if there are anything that you would like to know from that document, you may approach me in chambers. Having said that, I've also been handed out a list of witnesses that are going to be giving evidence. It may not be exhaustive. There may be people who may very well appear later, who may be called. If there anybody here or who you know has knowledge to inform the court as to what happened on that day or during that period when Neil Aggett was in detention, he's free to approach the evidence leaders and to finish his statement so that we may be able to be informed about exactly what happened. Having said that, I'll give over to the evidence leaders to proceed.
To the court, please. My Lord, the opening lines to the preamble of our South African Constitution reads as follows. We, I quote, we, the people of South Africa, recognize the injustices of our past, honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land, respect those who have worked to build and develop our country, and believe that South Africa belongs to all those who live in it, united in our diversity. We therefore, through our freely elected representatives, adopt this Constitution as the supreme law of the Republic, so as to heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on our democratic values, social injustices, and fundamental human rights. Lay the foundation for a democratic and open society in which government is based on the will of the people and every citizen is equally protected by the law. Improve the quality of life of all citizens and free the potential of each person, and build a united and democratic South Africa able to take its right place as a sovereign state in the family of nations. May God protect our people. Kosi sigeleli Afrika. Morena uloka sichaba sahesu. God hot CN South Africa. God bless South Africa. Mutsimo Fatsu Tsetso Afrika. Hosi Hatekisa Africa. May God bless our people. I unquote. My Lord, it is an omnibus that next month will mark the 38th anniversary of the death of Dr. Neil Aggett. I believe, my Lord, that this is the second only ever reopened inquest in this country relating to a detainee who died whilst detained by the then security branch of the South African Police Force. In the immortal words of Judge Billy Motley, who presided over the first ever precedent-setting inquest and historic inquest in this country in 2017, in the Timor inquest, he said, I quote, "Inquest proceedings are regulated by the Inquest Act 58 of 1959. The purpose of holding an inquest is to investigate the circumstances of death apparently occurring from other than natural causes and where the prosecutor has declined to prosecute. To achieve this purpose, it is necessary for any person who bears knowledge of the circumstances leading to the death and or the incident of death to avail such information to the court conducting the inquest proceedings." I unquote. My Lord, as the Honorable Court has correctly indicated, Dr. Aggett died whilst in detention on the 5th of February 1982, and the inquest was held. My Lord, to further quote Judge Motley, he further stated the following: "Considering the conspicuous of the documents submitted thus far, there is no doubt in my mind that during these proceedings, we as South Africans are about to enter a door that will rekindle painful memories, a door that invites us to embark on a journey which will cause us to confront the sordid part of our history. That door will only be closed once the truth is revealed." I unquote. In the words, my Lord, of the catalyst that set the ball rolling for the historic reopening of the inquest, it is a privilege today, my Lord, to present evidence in a democratic South Africa. Detention under apartheid South Africa could not be more aptly captured than in the poem penned by Chris van Wyk, which reads as follows. I quote, "He fell from the 9th floor. He hanged himself. He slipped on a piece of soap while washing. He hanged himself. He slipped on a piece of soap while washing. He fell from the 9th floor. He hanged himself whilst washing. He slipped from the 9th floor. He hung from the 9th floor. He slipped on the 9th floor whilst washing. He fell from a piece of soap while sleeping. He hung himself from the 9th floor. He washed from the 9th floor while sleeping. He was hung from a piece of soap whilst washing," unquote. Like the poem, my lord, the evidence that will be presented will focus on the horrifying practice of torture in detention in the apartheid South Africa. What we, my lord, would endeavor to show is the fundamental aim of the government policy in an apartheid South Africa then that was meant to maintain, under all circumstances, the white political supremacy and the preservation of white social and economic privilege. This was done by the introduction of security laws which were introduced as early as 1948. The passing of the Communism Act in 1950 was the first step towards the certain of what I call, towards the creation of what I call a police state in South Africa. Many other laws were adopted and practiced which had a draconian effect on our people. But today, my lord, from onwards, what we will endeavor to show further is that any resistance to the oppressive government was obliterated by any means, lawful and unlawful. What we will also endeavor to show was the tendency of some prosecutors, doctors, and even judicial officers to enable the unlawful and murderous actions of the special branch of the South African police force. What we will attempt to show is that if Dr. Neil Aggett indeed took his own life, there was no need for the special branch to go through the extremes that they did to look for evidence that Dr. Neil Aggett was, in their words, a born mental case, a suicide waiting to happen. What we will show, my lord, is the extent that the special branch went through, aided by persons in senior levels of both government and justice, to cover up the truth. We will argue, my lord, that given the extensive preparation for his impending inquest, unusual and highly irregular practices were formulated, aided by psychologists as well as senior members of the South African Police Special Branch. The pattern of behavior, the modus operandi, and the general acceptance of what became the standardized outcome of most inquests were immortalized in the book penned by learned advocate George Bizos in his book aptly titled No One to Blame. Undoubtedly, my lord, the very veil of so-called protection to the rest of South Africa to the benefit of a select few could only have been sanctioned by those seated at highest level of government. Many are yet to be held accountable for their actions. The reality, my lord, is that at least 67 detainees died while in custody of the security police. Those are which that we know of. The grim reality, my lord, is that the count was probably more. Even worse, my lord, is the reality that all the detainees could not have hanged themselves, jumped out of windows, slept whilst taking a bath, and so on. As boldly stated in our preamble, my Lord, it is time to give effect to the words in recognizing the injustices of the past. And there is no better time, my Lord, than the present to embark on a journey to heal the wounds inflicted on our people by the apartheid system. Yesterday, my Lord, that is the 19th of January 2020, I read various newspaper articles in which certain individuals were quoted as saying that they were detained and tortured in about the same time as Dr. Aggett. On behalf of the National Prosecuting Authority, my Lord, I appeal to those people to go via the National Prosecuting Authority to come forward to narrate their version of this despicable event to this court. That is our prayer to all who know that what happened to Dr. Neil Aggett, madam. That's our address. Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Advocate Vani.
As the court pleases. My Lord, I do have written copies of my opening address, and with the leave of the court, I can hand up the written copy.
That's fine. Thank you.
My Lord, I'm indebted to my learned friend from the State for his inspiring opening address. My Lord, some 38 years ago, Dr. Neil Aggett was found dead in his cell at John Foster Square in the early morning of 5 February 1982. He was the 51st detainee to die in detention in the custody of the security branch. He was only 28 years old. Lord, we are here today to search for the truth of what happened to Neil. The truth that was suppressed in the first inquest, and which was denied to his family, comrades, friends, and the nation for some 38 years. It will be our submission, my Lord, that a massive and obvious fraud was perpetrated by the state in the 1982 inquest. And my Lord, this demands the overturning of the original finding. Neil Aggett was a dedicated medical doctor, a trade union organizer. In his own words, my Lord, he was an idealist. He only wanted the best for his country. He stood with the oppressed peoples of South Africa. He was deeply offended by the massive inequalities imposed by the system of apartheid. In the words of his chief tormentor, he could have practiced in the affluent white suburbs of Johannesburg as a doctor. If he had, my Lord, he would most likely be alive and prosperous today. Instead, he chose to use his skills, his education, and his energy to make a meaningful difference to those on the receiving end of the pernicious system of apartheid. His chosen areas of intervention were in healthcare and on the shop floor. In the eyes of the nationalist regime and the hated security branch, this was a deep betrayal of his own race group. This made him a traitor in their eyes. He was the enemy, and he was going to pay for this betrayal. Neil was aware that his chosen path would place him at considerable risk and ultimately place him in harm's way. While he was by no means reckless, he would not have had it any other way. It was inevitable, my Lord, that at some point his idealism and his unrelenting dedication to social justice would come head to head with the brutal and hard machinery of the apartheid state. My Lord, the Aggett family has walked a long journey to today's hearing. Both Neil's parents, Aubrey and Joy Aggett, as well as Neil's brother, Michael, went to their graves without learning the real story behind Neil's death in detention. They had to live with a manifestly false official finding that nobody was to blame. Neil's sister, Jill Berger, who is with us in court today, has championed the reopening of this inquest on the Aggett family's behalf. It is Jill who Neil called when he was taken to John Vorster Square on 27 November 1981. And Neil assured Jill that it's fine, I've got nothing to answer for. It is Jill who vividly recalls visiting an emaciated Neil in John Vorster Square on 31st December 1981, and to whom Neil spoke of his hopes and his desires post-detention, including his aim to pursue a career in emergency surgery. It was Jill who received the earth-shattering news at 0600 hours on 5 February 1982 that Neil had died in detention. Jill, along with Neil's nephew, Stephen Aggett, who's also with us in court today, have remained resolute in their belief that the first inquest into Neil's death was a fraud. It is through their persistent efforts the reopening of the Aggett inquest was made possible. Lord, it is nothing less than disgraceful that the Aggett family has had to wait some 26 years since the advent of democracy before the reopening of this inquest. This matter, my Lord, I shall return to in due course. Lord, turning to the role of the former security branch of the South African Police. The security branch was a thoroughly corrupt organisation. Whole-scale fabrication of evidence and deception was the order of the day. They were the masters of the cover-up. Specialists like Woros Swanepoel were quickly brought in following incidents to concoct versions and tie up loose ends. It is our respectful view, my Lord, the bulk of what was put up by the security branch in the first inquest must be viewed with great circumspection. Indeed, we will submit that virtually all of it was transparently false. The challenge for this Honourable Court will be to determine the snippets of truth amongst the morass of falsehoods and deception. And Lord, following Neil's death, the machinery of the apartheid state immediately swung into action to cover up the real circumstances of his death. The state sent undercover operatives to illegally enter the Aggett family's home in Somerset West to look for evidence of Neil's claimed suicidal tendencies. The security branch bugged the officers of the Aggett lawyers and tapped their phones. It concocted a favourable version of Neil's death and detention. It then coached its officials to stick to the fabricated version it had concocted. Oh, my Lord, why would the security branch go to such lengths if in fact what they alleged actually happened? If it was simply a matter of a well-treated detainee falling apart following apparent disclosures against his comrades, there would be no need for such an elaborative and resource-heavy cover-up. It is the task of this Honourable Court to determine what was being covered up. We will submit, my Lord, that the answer is plain to see. They were covering up their unlawful role in the death of Neil Aggett. Ultimately, they were covering up their role in his unrelenting torture and his killing. My Lord, in this grubby pursuit, the security branch was ably assisted by a corrupt magistracy. The magistrate in the 1982 inquest was one Peter Kotze, who incidentally was the prosecutor in the inquest that exonerated the police into the inquest into the death of the late Ahmed Timol some 10 years earlier. In that inquest, Kotze distinguished himself by doing next to nothing to search for the truth. rather than conducting himself as an independent officer of the court, he aligned himself almost completely with the case of the security branch. My Lord, in Kotze, the magistrate had a pliant judicial officer who could be trusted to do the right thing. In Kotze, my Lord, the security branch were in safe hands, and they knew it. They simply had to go through the motions. They simply had to play to the gallery. Magistrate Kotze's courtroom was oppressive. Its benches stacked with security branch officers whose presence intimidated and deterred witnesses from testifying freely and truthfully. Magistrate Kotze played the role expected of him. He intervened and curtailed cross-examination by the Aggett family's counsel and often ruled that detainee statements were inadmissible. He ignored evidence, and he reached grossly improbable conclusions that were nothing less than breathtaking. My Lord, the state's efforts succeeded admirably. Magistrate Kotze's judgments in the first inquest exonerated the security branch. He dismissed the detainees' evidence of torture and concluded that nobody was to blame for Neil's death in detention. History, however, tells a different story, my Lord. History has since revealed the reality of what Neil endured in his 70 days of detention under Section 6 of the Terrorism Act. In the reopened Timol inquest, the High Court, as per Judge Motley, found that detention under the Terrorism Act, and I quote from that judgment, my Lord, became a tool in the hands of some members of the security branch, not only to torture, but also to kill detainees with impunity. The High Court's finding was by no means novel. 20 years earlier in its report, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission identified that torture in security detention was routine practice, and that the killing of detainees by the security branch was a strong possibility. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission found that the pervasive and systemic torture inflicted upon detainees, paired with the inhumane conditions of their detention, were sufficient to render suicides committed in detention as induced suicides, for which the security branch was held accountable. My Lord, the truth of Neil's death back in the early 1980s, as a white detainee in particular, would have been a public relations disaster for the state, both locally and internationally. This was particularly at a time when the state was becoming increasingly conscious of the implications of its deteriorating international image, with the death, my Lord, of Stephen Biko, which resulted in the French Navy cutting key military contracts and ties with South Africa. There was also the matter, my Lord, of one Lieutenant Stephen Whitehead, who will feature prominently in these proceedings. He was an ambitious young security branch officer with powerful family ties in the force, for whom responsibility for Neil's death would have spelt the end of his career. Lord, I now wish to provide a broad outline of the family's case that will be presented over the next days and weeks. My Lord, it is the Aggett family's firm belief that Neil was killed at the hands of the security branch officers, either directly or through unrelenting, systematic torture, abuse and neglect, which pushed him to take his own life, for which the relevant security branch officers must be held responsible for. The theory of the case says that the police went to great lengths to cover up one of two possible causes of death. One, that Neil's suicide was induced by the conduct and circumstances brought about by the security branch, or that Neil was in fact murdered by the security branch by the staging of his hanging while in an unconscious state. In dealing, my Lord, first with the conditions of his detention, history has shown that the conditions of Neil's detention bore no resemblance to the version that the security branch placed before the original inquest court. We have conducted a number of witness consultations with former detainees who were held at John Vorster Square around the same time as Neil's detention. And my Lord, we will be placing similar fact evidence before this court to demonstrate that torture and ill treatment at the hands of the security branch at John Vorster Square at that time was routine and commonplace. This torture ranged from abusive treatment, such as sleep deprivation, humiliation and forced exercise, to physical assault and electric shock treatment. Lord, I pause to pay tribute to those young men and women who stood up to the apartheid state and as a result were terribly abused in detention. Lord, some of these individuals are in fact with us in court today. People such as Barbara Hogan, Feroz Kachalia, Frank Chakani, Prema Naidu, Jabun Gwenya, Ismail Mwamilat, Sisa Njelakana, Red van Heerden, Salim Famadi, Ibrahim Ismail Ibrahim, Maurice Smithers, Gavin Anderson, Keith Coleman, and many others. And Lord, we salute their courage. We will corroborate the evidence of the detainees with the evidence of officials formerly in the employ of the security branch and the police at John Vorster Square. They will confirm that the abuse of detainees was a day-to-day reality. But Lord, we are grateful that there are some former police officers who are willing to speak the truth of what really took place in John Vorster Square during those years. We appreciate that in the early 1980s, they found themselves in a terrible predicament. They were required to lie under oath, failing which not only would their livelihoods and careers be at risk, they themselves might be physically abused or worse. They had every reason to fear the repercussions of speaking the truth at that time. While they did commit the crime of perjury and lying under oath in the 1982 inquest, that crime has long prescribed, and today they face no legal consequences for now disclosing the truth. And Lord, we encourage more police officers to come forward and unburden themselves, to help the Aggett family heal and reach closure. To those former police officers, some of whom will appear before this court under subpoena, we say now is the time for honesty and the truth. Those who testify honestly are likely to earn the gratitude of the Aggett family. Those who persist with charade and cover-up must be held to account. We remind these officers that those who lie under oath before these proceedings will be committing the crime of perjury, and we place them on notice. We have instructions from the Aggett family to vigorously pursue cases of perjury against those who lie before this court. Lord, I have alluded briefly to the elaborate cover-up concocted by the state before the first inquest. We intend to demonstrate, my Lord, that the first investigation of Neil's death was little more than a cover-up from start to end. The crime scene investigation in the cell was conducted in such a sloppy, inept and ham-fisted manner by supposedly experienced police officers that one must conclude they were simply taking steps to deflect attention from the truth of what happened. My Lord, one of the very first tasks carried out by the investigating officer in 1982 was to retrieve a South African Communist Party document from the security branch files that had been doctored by the security branch to read that detainees should rather commit suicide than betray their comrades. Indeed, this very same fabricated document was relied upon by the magistrate in the first Timol inquest to justify the finding that Ahmed Timol had committed suicide by jumping out of the 10th floor of John Foster Square. My Lord, this speaks volumes as to the mindset and aim of the first police investigation. Evidence will be led as to the strenuous and illegal attempts that were made to find evidence of so-called suicidal tendencies on the part of Neil. As mentioned, an operation that was authorized at the highest levels involving Whitehead himself included the illegal entry into the Aggett family home. It is hardly surprising, my Lord, that the cover-up program included the bugging of the Aggett family lawyers, including the chambers of the leader of the then Aggett team, George Bezos, SC. The gleaned information was then used to hold mock trials and to coach police officers on how to stick to the fabricated version. Turning to the medical evidence, we have carefully considered the medical evidence before the first inquest court. And while that medical evidence points to death by hanging, my Lord, it does not exclude the possibility that Dr. Aggett was murdered by staged hanging in an unconscious or semi-conscious or low conscious state. And we will need fresh medical evidence in this regard. We will call an experienced expert forensic pathologist to testify, and he will confirm that the staged hanging cannot be excluded on a scrupulous examination of the available medical evidence. He will also point out several shortcomings and mistakes in the post-mortem process that may have resulted in the missing or overlooking of important additional evidence of torture. Lord, the instrument of Neil's death, we are told, was a cloth or kikoi that was found encircling Neil's neck, which was double knotted just below his right ear. The first inquest court found that the kikoi was given to Neil while he was in his cell, and he was allowed to keep the cloth. Lord, we will need evidence to show that the possession of such material in a security police cell would have amounted to a serious breach of the prevailing police standing orders. Detainee witnesses will testify that they were not permitted to even wear belts for fear of the detainee using a belt or other instruments such as shoelaces and even socks, which could cause harm to themselves. Indeed, Jill Berger recalls from her visit to Neil having seen Neil without a belt or shoelaces, both of which could potentially have been used by Neil to take his own life. Evidence will be led that detainees were not even allowed to keep their towels following showers, and that police officials regularly searched detainees' cells to ensure that nothing illegal was kept in the cells. They will say that if the kikoi had been found, it would have been confiscated. Lord, in 1982, no investigation was conducted by the security branch or the first inquest court as to why Neil was permitted to keep the kikoi in his cell, or who was to blame for this. And we will need evidence in several other matters that tend to undermine the findings of the first inquest court. These include evidence that, one, contrary to the claims of the security branch, they indeed had unfettered access to detainees on the second floor cells. Secondly, that cell visits were skipped during the very hours that Aggett was alleged to have committed suicide. And, my Lord, the rather remarkable fact that only one solitary fingerprint was lifted from the grill from which Aggett allegedly climbed and hanged himself. The fingerprint expert will testify that this is unusual, to say the least. We will highlight how the security branch intentionally prevented Neil from meeting with officials who might have intervened on his behalf. We will consider the complaints of assault and abuse made by Neil himself. Indeed, the last one made on the very morning of the alleged suicide, the morning of 4th February. we will submit that this is not the conduct of someone who had given up on life, but rather the conduct of someone who was seeking redress and a reckoning with those who abused him. And Lord, I now turn to the question of the long delay in holding the reopening of this inquest. And my Lord, what I'm about to say is no reflection of my learned colleagues for the state. They and the investigating officer have worked diligently to prepare for this inquest, and we have collaborated closely with them. We all know, of course, my Lord, that this inquest, as with all the other apartheid-era cases, have been plagued by ongoing delays. We now know that this was not just a question of indifference or neglect on the part of the South African Police Service and the National Prosecuting Authority. We now know that post the winding up of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, decisions were taken at the highest political level to close down the investigations into the cases referred by the TRC to the NPA, including the Aggett case. And we refer to these cases as the TRC cases. My Lord, in the application brought at the end of 2018 by João Rodrigues to permanently stay the prosecution against him for his role in the murder of Ahmed Timo, the National Prosecuting Authority filed papers on the 4th of February 2019 in which they finally admitted that political interference stopped the investigations into the TRC cases. And my Lord, I've given you the footnoted reference for that case and the relevant affidavits. Lord, such interference, in our respectful view, amounted to state capture of the criminal justice system in relation to this class of cases. It allowed powerful forces in society to impose their will on institutions meant to uphold the rule of law. And through such state capture, my Lord, they guaranteed total impunity for some of the most serious crimes ever committed in South Africa. My Lord, we are talking close to 400 serious murder cases that have been suppressed and not investigated at the behest of powerful elements in society. Accordingly, my Lord, it is remarkable that to date there has been no inquiry into this monumental travesty of justice, notwithstanding repeated calls for an inquiry by families, former TRC commissioners, and indeed a recommendation by the full bench of this Honourable Court in the Rodrigues matter that it be addressed forthwith. My Lord, that is the same case in footnote 4. My Lord, the family's representatives met with the then National Director of Public Prosecutors and members of his staff 4 years ago, almost to this day, on 19th January 2016. The family's representatives provided the NDPP with evidence warranting the reopening of the inquest. Amongst the evidence that was presented included conclusive evidence that security branch members had perjured themselves in the first inquest on the question of torture. This was enough, my Lord, to warrant the reopening in 2016. Yet it has taken some 4 years to get to today. Several threats of legal action had to be made against the NPA and the Minister of Justice. And my Lord, the extensive delay has caused the Aggett family considerable stress and strain, and indeed great prejudice. The key suspect in Neil's death was his chief interrogator, Lieutenant Stephen Whitehead. My Lord, Whitehead reportedly died in the very week that the Minister of Justice eventually announced the reopening of the Aggett inquest in April of 2019. And my Lord, he was only 62 or 63 years old at the time. In our respectful view, had the NDPP and the Minister of Justice acted diligently and without delay, following the meeting of January 2016, the Aggett inquest could potentially have been held before Whitehead's death, and he could have been held to account for the role he played in Neil's death. Announcement, there was more inaction and more delay. Family is grateful to him for his expeditious actions. My Lord Yasmin Sukha, who's also with us today, a former Truth Commissioner and former head of the Foundation for Human Rights, has stood by the Aggett family and many of the other families through thick and thin. We are enormously grateful to the Foundation for Human Rights for their support, which has made this investigation, our private investigations, possible. Needless to say, my Lord, this matter could not have happened without the sterling services of the Pro Bono Department of Webber Wentzel attorneys. We are grateful to them. Our private investigator, Frank Dutton, painstakingly investigated this case. My Lord, his past track record over many decades speaks for itself. Without his backbreaking investigations, this inquest would not have happened. My Lord, we must also pay tribute to the first legal team led by George Bezos that carried out back-breaking work in the early 1980s to find the truth in the most adverse of circumstances. These individuals include, of course, counsel George Bezos and Dennis Cooney, assisted by Mohammed Nafsa, and the Bell Dewar and Hall attorneys, including William Lane, David Dyson, and James Sutherland. My Lord, they were up against a system that was stacked against them. Today we simply build on their remarkable labour and work, and we are indebted to them. Lastly, we must thank the Neil Aggett Support Group and the Food and Allied Workers Union, FAWU, for keeping the memory of Neil Aggett alive over so many years, and for pushing for justice, including the laying of criminal charges against Stephen Whitehead and others in 2014. This was done, my Lord, by the late Brian Sandberg, and we wish to pay particular tribute to the late Brian Sandberg, who was formerly the Neil Aggett Support Group coordinator and Aggett's longtime friend who he had known in school. So, my Lord, while there has been an inordinate delay in reopening this inquest, it is nonetheless a most historic day. It marks the beginning of the road to closure for the Aggett family. While they would have preferred to be able to hold the central role players to account, most of whom have died, they are grateful that this inquest has been reopened. In conclusion, it is our intention to demonstrate that there are in fact people and institutions to blame for Neil's death and detention, and that the first inquest finding of nobody to blame must be overturned. We will show that a massive fraud was perpetrated before the first inquest court, and that the preponderance of probabilities points overwhelmingly to the fact that Neil died at the hands of security branch officers, either directly or through systematic torture and neglect which led him to take his own life. In either scenario, my Lord, the relevant security branch officers must be held responsible for Neil's death, and an appropriate finding should be made in terms of Section 16, Sub 2D of the Inquest Act. My Lord, those are my opening statements.
Thank you, Counsel. Mr. Chair, take the chair.
Thank you, my Lord. Lord, we are by no means here to try and seek justification of any act of abuse, of torture committed by any arm of the apartheid government. On the basis of our instructions, we will endeavour to assist this inquest to investigate the circumstances of the death of Dr. Aggett. And no doubt we will be faced with facts that are revealed that are uncomfortable to hear and will be hurtful to many. It is unfortunate that this reopening only takes place 38 years after the death of Dr. Aggett and some 25 years into our new democracy, because it is of no doubt that much of the evidence will have been lost due to this long duration of time, and that memories will be faded and would be, to a certain extent, not all that reliable as it would have been all that time ago. Lord, may this proceedings find the truth, and may it give healing to those in need of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council. Is there anybody else who may want to make a presentation, if any, who represents anybody else who's here? Thank you. At this juncture, then we'll break for tea and allow Council to rearrange themselves as to the presentation of evidence. We'll take a 15-minute break. Thank you.
So you're only if you have to maintain it. So even if something does come up, we don't know.
If they are brought here, they obviously entitled to see the system. And with them, what we will obviously do to have a short consultation in this instance, whether there's a possibility. Obviously, one thing we cannot before we start again.
Oh, no. You're good to go. How are you?
Good, how are you? Yes, I'm well. No, it's fine. That's fine. Yeah, it's not
our counseling, my counseling.
And just one second.
Until the 3rd of February 2020, so that we can ascertain exactly the nature and the whereabouts of Mr. Lamprecht, Ms. Visser,
Mr. Lamprecht, yes.
Ms. Visser, my lord.
Ms. Pizza.
Visser, my lord.
Fisker.
Yes,
Okay.
Visser, my lord. Mr. Zili, Mr. Nodia, Mr. Fenter, and I will simply hand over the subpoenas for Mr. Erasmus, who will be testifying, and Mr. Deercliff, who is represented. As the court pleases, my lord, I beg leave to hand in the subpoenas. The state will then call Warrant Officer Kamanyane to the witness stand.
Yes. So were the subpoenas served?
Indeed,
Yeah,
my lord,
okay.
and there's been personal service in respect of all the offences, all the witnesses.
So the warrants can only be authorized at the conclusion of the day today, if they are not here today.
My lord, what we would ask for, because we do not know the exact position relating to legal services, we'll ask for you to be held over until the 3rd of February 2020.
All right.
As the court pleases, my lord.
You want me to do the order now?
My lord, we can do it until the end of the day.
Okay.
As the court pleases, my lord. May the witness be sworn in, my lord.
Please take 4 minutes to for the record. Yes, any objections taken to subscribe those? You swear that the evidence you're about to give is the truth of this truth and nothing but the truth? You raise the right hand and say
Why don't you must please raise your voice a bit. Sir, is it correct that you are a member of the South African Police Services?
Yes,
Where are you stationed?
I'm stationed at Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation, DPCI under Crime Assistance in Pretoria, the office.
You hold the rank of a warrant officer?
Yes, ma'am.
And how many years service do you have to date?
12 years service.
In the South African Police.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, sir, what is the purpose of, if I were to put it to you, the DPCI and CATS, crimes against the state, is one in the same unit? What is the purpose of these two units, or the unit in particular?
Our unit is mandated to investigate, especially truth and reconciliation cases. That's why I'm an investigator of Dr. Neil Aggett. The inquest was registered in the office.
Can you raise your voice, warrant officer, please? Yes.
Now, Warren, when did you receive instructions to proceed with the investigation into this matter?
I was instructed on May 2019.
Prior to May 2019, who was the investigating officer in this matter?
The investigating officer was my colleague, Captain Benjamin Nell.
Captain Benjamin who?
Nell.
Now, sir, when you started your investigation, please testify about what you did regarding the record in particular. Start right at the beginning.
When I started my investigation, I received a file from Dr. Christoulas from Priority Crime Litigation Unit, PCLU in Pretoria.
Sorry, Warren, just before you proceed, it's correct that you prepared an affidavit in respect of your evidence that you are going to give, am I correct?
That's correct, ma'am.
And you also prepared an index regarding the annexures that are attached to your affidavit, am I correct?
That's correct, ma'am.
My Lord, with leave of the court, I beg leave to hand in a copy to the court. All learned counsel have copies,
Yes.
as well as the index, so that it may be easier to follow.
Okay.
I'm going to refer you to paragraph 3, sir. What documents did you receive?
So the first, what annexure do we mark it this affidavit?
My Lord, because the exhibits that were handed in at the original inquest were marked from A to E, may we then mark this exhibit F?
Exhibit F.
Yes, my Lord, and then all the accompanying annexures will follow thereafter.
Very well done.
Thank you, my Lord. Warrant proceed. What documents did you receive from Dr. Pretorius?
I received newspaper articles pertaining to Dr. Neil Aggett, marked as annexure FGK 1 of 1. Documents from Belden Dewa and Halls pertaining to Dr. Aggett, marked FGK 1 of 2. Supplementary argument on behalf of the Aggett family, marked as FGK 1 of 3.
Proceed.
Third supplement to report by Belden Dewa and Hall, marked as FGK 1 of 4. Confidential correspondence from Belden Dewa and Hall dated 4th of October 1982, marked as FGK 1 of 5. Correspondence from Belden Dewa and Hall dated 31st of March 1983, marked as FGK 1 of 6. Correspondence from Raymond Tecker to Miller and Company dated 24th May 1982, marked as FGK 1 of 7. Affidavit of Oriet van Heerden dated 20th of September 1982, marked as FGK 1 of 8. Documentation from the Supreme Court in case number 6533/A2, marked FGK 1 of 9. Heads of argument in case number 139/A2, marked FGK 1 of 10. And lastly, sworn affidavit of Petrus Arnoldas Jagenskotze, marked FGK 1 of 11.
When you receive these documents marked FGK 1 in brackets 1 until FGK 11, what did you do with the documents, Warren?
I compiled the file, then marked as annexure FGK 1.
My Lord, I beg leave to hand in the first file.
Okay. So the present FGK 1 would include FGK 1 up to 11.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. What else did you do, Warren? What happened thereafter?
I then received 2 files from Advocate Chris McAdam from Priority Crime Litigation Unit from Pretoria.
What were the contents of the docket?
The contents of the files is a calendar for the year 1981, marked as FGK 2 of 1.
Proceed.
A telephone list containing the names and extensions of police officials in the
WLD marked as FGK 2 of 2. A file marked Directorate of Security Legislation, Aggett Neil H. marked FGK 2 of 3. A file marked Women Rights Violation Protocol, CT 00410 marked FGK 2 of 4. A file marked Dipale EM marked FGK 2 of 5. And other documents which I marked FGK 2 of 6.
Would I be correct to say that all those documents, as you testified about, were filed in file 2?
That's correct, my lord.
I beg leave, my lord, to hand in file 2.
Thank you.
Now, sir, in terms of paragraph 5, from paragraph 5 onwards, did you lay out your attempt to obtain a copy of the document? What did you do?
Yes, first, I visited John Foster Square Police Station, where Dr. Neil Aggett was detained in 1982, to try and trace if I can find any original dockets or related documents of the inquest of Dr. Neil Aggett.
Did you find anything?
Nothing was found. ma'am.
Did you get confirmation from any senior members of the police service regarding the search?
Yes, my lord. I was assisted by Colonel Edwards, who explained his duties on trying and tracing the original dockets and documents from the police station, and he couldn't find anything.
Is it correct that you obtained an official letter?
That's correct, madam.
What is it marked? What annexure is it?
It's
to?
marked as FGK3.
My lord, the following documents are in file 3. I
Okay.
will hand it in at the end of this portion of evidence from 3 to 12.
Very well then.
Thank you, my lord. After you finished at John Foster Police Station, where else did you go, Warrant?
I then visited the Johannesburg Magistrate Court, where the previous inquest of Dr. Neil Aggett was held in 1982.
Did you obtain a copy of the record?
There was no records found.
And you confirmed this with who?
I confirmed with the inquest clerk, Mrs. Haida Fenter, on the 14th of October 2019.
Did you obtain something in writing from her to this effect?
He gave us a letter regarding the,
And it's your annexure marked. What is the annexure number?
it's marked as FGK 4.
Now, Warren, why is it that there are no inquest records available?
I was informed by inquest clerk, Mrs. Haida Fenter. The policy of Department of Justice, dated the 13th of June 1986, provides for the destruction of an inquest records after a period of 10 years.
So the inquest record was destroyed.
That's correct, ma'am.
The policy document, you obtained a copy thereof. What is the reference number?
It's marked as FGK 5. The disposal authority from Department of Justice.
Proceed with your efforts to try and obtain a copy of the record. Where else did you try?
I also approached the Office of South African National Archives to try and trace if they got any copy of inquest of Dr. Neil Aggett.
Yes.
And there was nothing found at the National Archives.
Did you receive any file in respect of Dr. Aggett himself?
Only a copy of detainee files of Dr. Neil Aggett was found.
Proceed anywhere else?
Then I also request from the representative of the Aggett family if they have any information of any records that could help us through the investigation of the fresh inquest. Then there was no records found also.
When you talk about the representatives, in which matter is this warrant?
They represented the family during the civil claim that was instituted.
When no documents were found, where else did you go?
I then traced all the records from University of Witwatersrand.
What did you do?
I visited the archives
Yes.
at Wits,
Yes.
and I was assisted by the curator, Mrs. Gabriel Mohali.
What exhibits, what inquest record did you get, warrant? What numbers?
From the website that I was given by the Mrs. Mohali, I downloaded documents consisting of 3,707 pages, 3,707 pages of the record.
They are marked from exhibit, which alphabets in particular?
As well as exhibit marked A to E.
Do you have a copy there for the court?
That's correct, ma'am.
My Lord, I beg leave then to hand in all the exhibits. They are marked on the side from A to E. You may then hand all the documents in. Robert.
Okay. So will that include the inquest record found at Wits?
This is what we are talking about.
Okay.
My Lord, we will start with exhibit A warrant and proceed to hand them over to His Lordship.
So,
There are 14 volumes, my Lord.
yes,
14.
all the volumes of the record.
14 volumes.
Warrant.
So the 14 volumes are marked annexes A to E.
Indeed, my Lord.
The big ones. This is most of the big.
9 volumes. 14. Yes.
May I proceed?
Okay. Yes, may I proceed now?
Now, warrant. You also are in possession of a consolidated list, which is an index to the record. Am I correct?
That's correct, ma'am.
And what is it filed in your statement as? We start here at paragraph 8.
It is marked as a FGK 6.
Now, Warren, when you went through the record, is the record complete or are there portions that are missing?
There are some limited portion that is missing from the record.
Can you can you tell us which portions are missing, in particular identify the annexures?
The following records were missing from the records. Item B1,
Yes.
Statement of Sergeant J. Ajenbach, page 92. Item B2, Docket Volume 2.
Yes.
Item B3.1.3, Barbara Hogan, C is missing, not submitted. Item B6.1, Foster Carry Affidavit, missing, not submitted. Item B7.5, West LJ, Psychosis of Sleep Deprivation, missing, not submitted. Item B1, Volume 2 and 3 of Volume 1 are missing, not submitted. Item B4.1.3, Statement of Oriet van Heerden is missing, not submitted. Item B3.5.19, Statement by Barbara Hogan is not included. Item B4.2.2, Statement by Barbara Hogan is missing, not submitted.
Now, Warren, what efforts did you undertake to ascertain the whereabouts of these missing documents, if anything at all?
I then went back to Vets Archives to see Mrs. Gabriel Mohali
Yes.
to confirm if on their site is it everything that reflects on the records that has been downloaded from the website that was given by her. Then she confirmed that the online inventory was a correct reflection of what was uploaded according to her.
Now, subsequently, when going through the inquest record, we find that there are no photographs regarding the post-mortem or the crime scene. Did you look for any photographs of the crime scene or the photographs of the post-mortem in particular?
Yes, my lord.
Tell us what happened.
Initially, I was informed by Mrs. Gabriel Mohali that there are photographs of Dr. Neil Aggett. Then when I went to check at the Vets Archives, I couldn't find anything of any of the photographs. Specifically, I was looking for the post-mortem photographs and the crime scene photographs.
Did you ascertain why initially you were told that there were photographs and now there were none?
Yes, I did ask him.
And what was the response?
Then I couldn't get a response based on that.
Did you subsequently obtain photographs of Dr. Aggett?
Yes, my lord.
How many photographs did you get?
I've got 4 copies of Dr. Neil Aggett hanging in a cell number 209.
And where did you get those photographs or those copies of the photographs? Huh?
I got it from the legal firm of the Dr. Neil Aggett family.
And what annexure has it been handed in?
FGK 7 from 1 up to 4.
As part of your investigation, is it also correct that you obtained or you downloaded a number of laws that were prevailing at the time? Am I correct?
Yes, my lord.
Can you inform the court as to what laws you obtained?
Inquest Act 58 of 1959, marked as FGK 8 of 1. The Suppression of Communism Act 44 of 1950, marked as FGK 8 of 2. The General Law Amendment Act 37 of 1963, marked as FGK 8 of 3. The Terrorism Act number 83 of 1967, marked as FGK 8 of 4.
Yes.
The General Law Amendment Act 76 of 1962, marked as FGK 8 of 5. The Internal Security Act number 79 of 1976, marked as FGK 8 of 6. Then lastly, Promotion of National Unity and Reconciliation Act 34 of 1995, marked FGK 8 of 7.
Now, further as part of your investigation, did you visit the cells at John Foster Square?
Yes, my lord.
What did you do there?
On my arrival at the John Foster Square police station, I called the LCRC to help with a photo album.
Who is LCRC?
I was assisted by Constable Mutupi from the LCRC Johannesburg.
What does LCRC stand for?
Local Criminal Record Center.
Did you compile an album?
Yes, Constable Mutupi did compile a photo album.
Did you, what else did you do, Warren?
I also obtained the plans of John Foster Square police station from the Department of Public Works in Pretoria.
Do you have any special requests regarding the crime scene photo album as well as the John Foster Square album, beg your pardon, the plans?
Yes, my lord.
What are they?
Regarding the photo album that was compiled by Constable Mutupi and the plans, the plans from of the police station.
Yeah.
It's better if it's not going to be public because of the security reasons. If people they can know about the plans of the police station, it can cause the problem for the SAPS.
So you're asking for it not to be disclosed to the public?
That's correct, ma'am.
The plans.
And the photo album also, ma'am.
Now, as part of your further investigation, you also read published books, am I correct?
That's correct,
Or
ma'am.
articles. Can you inform the court what you did?
I read the following books, titled No One to Blame by George Bizo, marked FGK 11 of 1.
Yeah.
The title Detention and Torture in South Africa by Don Foster with Dennis Davis and Diana Sandra, marked as FGK 11 of 2.
Yeah.
And also newspaper articles relating to the death of Dr. Neil Aggett, marked as FGK 11 of 3.
Yeah. What else?
The title Political Imprisonment in South Africa, Amnesty International Report, marked FGK 11 of 4.
Now, Warren, during the course of your investigation, you also attempted to ascertain the whereabouts of a number of police officials or witnesses who may have been directly or indirectly involved in Dr. Aggett's death. Am I correct?
That's correct, my lord.
All right. Let's start with the first person. Who did you try and trace, and did you trace him?
Constable Magezi Eddie Chauke.
Did you trace him?
Yes, my lord.
When did you make contact with him?
I made contact with Constable Magezi Eddie Chauke on the 18th of January.
And is he willing to testify?
That's correct,
Was
ma'am.
it 10 years ago? This is
they-
2010.
it's a spelling error then. It's 2020.
Okay. So it'll be 2020.
2020,
Shall we amend
18th
it?
of January
Second,
2020.
my lord, 2020.
Yes.
Apologies, my lord. Yes, who else?
Also, Adonis
Were you able to trace this person?
There is no surname and unable to trace him, no records on him.
Proceed. Who else?
Warrant Officer Charles Vainant Lambert.
Yes. Did you subpoena him?
Yes, my lord. No statement submitted.
Proceed. Who else?
Sergeant Aleta Getruta Blom. Now is Fesser, surname.
Did you subpoena her?
Yes, my lord.
Statement submitted?
No statement submitted.
Who else?
Constable Daniel Hendrik Petras Zili. Subpoenaed. No statement submitted.
Who else?
Constable John Edward Lloyd.
Yes.
Subpoenaed via email. No statement submitted.
Who else?
Sergeant Michael Stephen Joubert. Unable to trace him. No profile traced. Hendrik van der Merwe. No record. Unable to trace him.
Yes.
Van Zyl. Unable to trace him. No first names.
Proceed.
Captain Martin Johan Nodier. Subpoenaed. No statement submitted. Constable C.J.J. Smith. Contact made. He suffered a heart attack.
So you were unable to ascertain his whereabouts.
That's correct, madam.
Proceed.
Lieutenant Colonel Rolf Johannes Venter. Subpoenaed. No statement submitted to me.
Okay.
Warrant Officer Nicholas Johannes Dietlex. Subpoenaed. No statement submitted to me. Advised not to submit a statement. Sergeant Paul Erasmus. Subpoenaed. His statement submitted in Timor Inquest as well as the Truth and Reconciliation TRC.
Now, so is it also correct that you ascertained the number of police officials are also deceased?
That's correct, ma'am.
Did you obtain death certificates for the police officers?
Yes, my lord.
Tell us the name of the police officer and on which day they passed away.
James Ajenbach, deceased 2003 on the 7th of July. Marked SFG K12 of 1. Musweu Paul Sekhu, deceased 2000, 1st of May. Marked FGK 12 of 2. Stefan Peter Whitehead, deceased 2019, April the 23rd. Marked FGK 12 of 3. Michael Christopher Joubert, deceased 2011, October the 3rd. Marked FGK 12 of 4. Andries Abraham Struwig, deceased 2014, January the 25th, marked FGK 12 of 5. Daniel Dennis Mahoney, deceased 2017, April the 5th, marked FGK 12 of 7. Christian Stephanus Koltz, deceased 1985, December the 8th, marked FGK 12 of 8. Johannes Stephanus Marais, deceased 1988, August the 27th, marked FGK 12 of 9. Daniel Gert Osthuizen, deceased 2015, April the 19th, marked FGK 12 of 10. Johannes Jacobus Stein, deceased 2001, November the 1st, marked FGK 12 of 11. Andre Martin, deceased 2006, March the 5th, marked FGK 12 of 12. Then lastly, Arthur Binoni Conrad. This is 2012, November the 7th.
Sorry, 2012, 1107. It's not
07.
Okay.
Marked FGK 12 of 13.
Hello, then FGK 3 to FGK 12 will now be handed in. It is file 3.
Okay.
Thank you, my lord. Now, Warrant, during the course of your investigation, is it correct that you also requested copies of police officials?
That's correct, ma'am.
Who did you request it from?
I made a request to the Office of Legal Services in Pretoria, Office of General Hunewald.
You have a copy of your correspondence. Can you tell the court what is the index number?
It's marked FGK 13. The request is dated the 16th of September 2019.
Is it correct that you applied for the police files of 24 police officials? Am I correct?
That's correct, ma'am.
Will you read the names of the police officers into the court?
The files that I made a request for is J. Agenbach, N.J. Ditlevs, M.C. Joubert, M.S. Joubert, C.W. Lambert, J.E. Lloyd, C. Mahoro, D.D. Mahoney, M.G. Maketa, J.S. Marais, A. Martin, M.J. Nodier, D.J. Osteisen, J.C. Pretorius, LCP Prince, CS Skolt, MP Sikhu, J.J. Stein, J.C. Strauss, A.A. Struwig, T.J. Sonnepoel, C.H. Van der Merwe, S.P. Whitehead, DHP Zili.
Now, of the 24 files that you received, that you requested, how many files did you receive?
Only 8 files were received.
Tell us the names of the 8 files that you received.
The first files, MP Sikhuhu, marked FGK 13 of 1. The second file, MS Joubert, marked FGK 13 of 3. The third file, MC Joubert, marked FGK 13 of 3. The fourth file, CH Van der Merwe, marked FGK 13 of 4. The fifth file, MG Maketa, marked FGK 13 of 5.
Stop there, Warren. My lord, this will bring us to the end of file 4. Please hand that in.
Okay. File 4.
And the remaining 3 files, Warren.
NJ Dietlefs, marked FGK 13 of 6. MJ Nodier, marked FGK 13 of 7. Then lastly, J. Agenbach, marked FGK 13 of 8.
My lord, that will bring us to the end of file 5. May that be handed in.
Yes.
Now, Warren, this remaining 16 files, what happens to them?
When I received the files from Captain Dexon from the legal service from General Hunewald's office, she told me this is the only file, 8 files that she could manage to trace from archives.
And the remaining 16 files, you don't know what happened to it?
I don't know what happened to the remaining 16 files.
Now, when you received these 8 files, were you given the originals? How does it work?
I was given the originals of the 8 files. Then I was told not to leave the office with those files. Then I must just make copies, then leave the files at the office. Then I was just shown the photocopy machine. Then I only did the copies of those 8 files.
And you personally attended to the 8 files, the copy?
Yes, my lord.
Now, Warren, is it also correct that you applied for detainee files? Would that be correct?
Yes, that's correct, my lord.
Who did you apply to?
I made a request to National Archives in Pretoria to Mr. Gerrit Wagner in October 2019
Yes. And?
about the detainee files.
Yes.
Then I was informed that the detainee files that I've been requested, it's the same list that my colleague Captain Benjamin Neil made a request on the 8th of January 2018. And there was a copy that was signed by him when he made a request to the National Archives. Then I was handed over that copy of his signature.
Do you have a copy of it? What did you annex it? What did you mark it as?
It is marked as FGK 14.
Now, did you receive the files, Warren, and on what date?
I then approached Captain Nell to assist me with the detainee files that he requested from the National Archives. Then I received the file from Captain Ben at the offices of Priority Crime Litigation Unit in Pretoria.
On what date?
It was on the 1st of November 2019.
What files did you receive? Can you
17 files received from him.
You have the copies of the files there with you?
That's correct, madam.
Read into the record what files you received.
Firoz Chakalia is marked as FGK 14 of 1.
Yes.
Frank Chikani marked FGK 14 of 2. Keith Coleman marked FGK 14 of 3.
Is it Keith Coleman?
Yeah, Keith Coleman.
Right.
Then NS Dipale marked FGK 14 of 4.
It's FGK of FKG. Yes.
It's FGK, my lord. I think there's
It's
a
supposed to be
typing
FGK,
error
is not-
also on
so
this numbering.
So they
But on the
should
file is
all be
correct.
FGKs, not the others are reading FKG. There's one which
It's
is
all
FKG.
FGK, my lord.
Yeah, number 3 and number 4 are reading FKG.
FKG.
So it should be the other way around.
Yes, my lord.
You know, that would bring us to the end of file 6. You may hand that in.
Okay.
Proceed.
Elizabeth Floyd marked FGK 14 of 6.
Yes.
Barbara Hogan marked FGK 14 of 7.
Yes.
Thabo Samson Leruma marked FGK 14 of 8.
My lord, that brings us to the end of volume 7. May the file be handed in.
7.
Then Eric Mutonga, marked FGK 14 of 9. Ismail Momonite, marked FGK 14 of 10. Paramathan Naidu, marked FGK 14 of 11. Shirish Nanabai, marked FGK 14 of 12. Gabriel Jabulani Ngwenya, marked FGK 14 of 13.
My Lord, that brings us to the end of volume 8. May the Father be with him. Well, if you can just refer to your index.
Okay.
You don't need to check.
Yeah.
Who else, Warren?
Then Sisun Jikelani, marked FGK 14 of 14. Maurice Peters Smithers, marked FGK 14 of 15. Oriet van Heerden, marked FGK 14 of 16.
My Lord, that brings us to the end of volume 9. May that be with him. Next one, Warren.
Agate Neil H, marked FGK 14 of 17.
My Lord, that is volume 10. May that be handed in.
Thank you.
Now, Warren, one of the main interrogators in this matter, Lieutenant Whitehead, passed away on the 23rd of April 2018. It's correct that you obtained a copy of the abridged death certificate, am I correct?
Yes, my lord.
Did you try and obtain a copy of the unabridged death certificate?
Yes, I've tried to get the unabridged death certificate.
Yes, and?
I was unable to issue the unabridged death certificate from Department of Home Affairs.
When did you visit Department of Home Affairs, Warren?
On the 30th of April, no, sorry, my lord, on the 14th of January 2020,
And which Home Affairs office did you go to?
in Pretoria.
And what were you told and by who?
I was told by the employee of Home Affairs, Mr. Mtimu, that as an investigating officer, I can't get unabridged death certificate of Mr. Whitehead. It can only be issued to the family members. I then made another request in Durban relating to the unabridged death certificate of Whitehead. Then I was told the same explanation that I received from Pretoria,
And what
that,
is the...
that only family members, they can apply for unabridged death certificate.
So the situation as it stands, what are you intending to do about it?
Arrangement has been made from my office to prepare a 205 subpoena so that the Department of Home Affairs can come and explain to court about the unabridged death certificate.
Now let's move to paragraph 20. During the course of your investigation, is it correct that you met with a Mr. Erasmus?
Yes, madam.
Mr. Erasmus is going to testify?
Yes, madam.
Did you obtain any evidence from Mr. Erasmus?
Yes, my lord.
Tell this court what happened.
I consulted with Mr. Paul Erasmus, a former security branch police official who testified at TRC. And his testimony at TRC, he testified about the breaking into and entering into the home of Aggate's parents. And then during my consultation with Mr. Erasmus, on the 5th of December 2019, he handed a copy of a photograph marked 392/82 on the reverse side of it.
Did you take it in as an exhibit? What number did you allocate to it?
I've marked it as FGK 15.
What else did you get from Mr. Erasmus?
I also received a reel of tape from Mr. Erasmus.
Yes.
He advised that the reel was used in Niagara spy tape machine, which was used to the special branch to record conversation secretly. And Mr. Erasmus alleges that he might have recorded the conversation with one of the chief interrogators, Lieutenant Whitehead, and that the reel might contain valuable evidence regarding Dr. Aggett.
Now this Nagra spy machine, were you able to get hold of it to play the reel back?
Attempt has been made to get a Nagra machine domestically, but we are still in process of getting the machine. And I've made contact also with the audio laboratories and informants to assist if they have the Nagra machine that can play the reel.
Where's the reel at the moment, Warren?
The reel is in my possession. I've sealed it in the evidence bag PAD 0020787762.
From the time that you received it from Mr. Erasmus up until now, was the reel damaged in any way, contaminated? Did you interfere with the reel?
No, I didn't interfere with the reel. It's still sealed like I received from Mr. Erasmus.
You also consulted with the Professor Haroon who's going to testify, am I correct?
That's correct, ma'am.
There was a gentleman whose name has come up, Mr. Oret van Heerden. Can you inform the court as to what efforts you undertook to try and trace him?
During the course of my investigation, I've tried to make contact with Mr. Oret van Heerden
Yes.
in May 2019. I sent him an email and explained the reason regarding the inquest of Dr. Neil Aggett.
Yes.
Then since he promised that he will come back to us, then since then I haven't received any contact from him.
Where is
He never
Mr.
responded.
Where is Mr. van Heerden living? Do you know?
He stays in overseas, according to our conversation on an email. He was not around South Africa.
Now, sir, is it also correct that you obtained a list of detainees who died in detention? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, ma'am.
What number did you annex it? What did you mark it?
I've marked FGK 16.
Is it also correct that you downloaded a number of documents from the SAHA website?
That's correct, my lord.
What's that? What website?
My lord, if I can just explain. SAHA stands for what? Do you know what is
South
it?
African History Archives.
All right. Tell us what you downloaded. You don't need to look at it. You can just read it into the record.
Okay. I have downloaded Rolf Jacobus Venter amnesty application AM 2774/96, and it's marked FGK 17/1. And Vakas Johannes Lutz amnesty application AM 4149/96, marked FGK 17 of 2. Is together with Gideon Jacobus van Zyl, Johannes Stein, Christopher Johannes Smith, Isaac Johannes Marais, William Charles C. Smith, Daniel Johannes Neven Hayes, Philip Rudolph Kraus. And then I also downloaded Paul Francis Erasmus Eric amnesty application AM 4158/96, Gusen and Gary Leon Pollock 3690/96 and 2538/96 marked FGK 17 of 3. And Paul Francis Erasmus amnesty application AM 3690/96 marked FGK 17 of 4. William Charles Cecil Smith amnesty application AM 5469/97, it's marked FGK 17 of 5. Elizabeth Floyd submissions marked FGK 17 of 6. Dr. Coleman special hearings marked FGK 17 of 7. The judiciary dated 27 October 1997 marked FGK 17 of 8. And lastly, Charles Alfred Zilli amnesty application AM 3751/96 marked FGK 17 of 9.
My Lord, that brings us to the last volume. I have nothing further to say, my Lord.
Okay. That's are there any questions that we'll start with students?
Yes, my Lord, I do have a few
Questions.
Warrant Officer, could we perhaps turn to page 2 of your affidavit? If we could just start with paragraph 4. I just have a few questions for clarification on this paragraph as well as a few other paragraphs. Firstly, thank you for your investigations and the collaboration that we've experienced. You obtained a calendar for the year 1982, which you handed up, at least 1981, which you handed up as an exhibit. And I can see why that could be useful for the court, is to have a calendar for the days and the months, days, weeks and months for the period of detention. But would a calendar for 1982 not also be useful for the court, particularly for the months of January and February of 1982, given that death of Mr. Aggett took place in early February of that year? And will you make steps to ensure that such a calendar is also put up as an exhibit?
I'll make that request, Madam.
Thank you, Warrant Officer. Just to clarify, you also have put up in the third bullet point a file marked Directorate of Security Legislation, Aggett Neil H. That's FGK 2 sub 3. Just for the court's benefit, is that the personal file of Mr. Aggett?
That's correct, ma'am.
And is it the same detainee file that you refer to later in your affidavit, or is it a different one?
It's the same one, ma'am.
It's the same one. Okay, thank you. And then the second last bullet point, you have a file marked Dipale EN, FGK 2 sub 5. And perhaps for the benefit of the court, you can explain why that file has been handed up.
Regarding the Pale file, Master Dipale also died in John Foster Square under police detention during 1982. He died few days after Dr. Neil Aggett. That's why I made a request of that file. And the main investigator on that matter, it was Warrant Officer Dietlefs.
Dietlefs.
That's correct, ma'am.
And in fact, am I right in saying that Ernest Dupale, at least the official recorded cause of death, was suicide by hanging?
That's correct, ma'am.
Thank you.
So how many days after Dr. Fanier, Dr. Aggett, do you know? Or weeks or months?
It was only, I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's 10 days after Dr. Neil Aggett. It was only a few days after Dr. Neil Aggett.
We'll check and,
Okay.
and attempt to confirm the date of the death of Ernest Dupale.
Does anybody know whether there was an inquest about Dipale?
I believe that there was an inquest. I'm not entirely sure whether it was a formal or informal inquest. Warrant Officer, did you happen to come across any inquest records?
It was just an informal inquest, my lord.
So it appears that it was only an informal inquest. We will liaise with our colleagues from the state to see if we can perhaps find those records and submit them to you as an exhibit. My Lord, I have been given a date which might be subject to confirmation by my learned juniors, which would put his death on the 8th of August 1982.
Dipale.
So that's Ernest Dupale, so that would be some months
Oh,
later.
okay.
I think we do need to double check because, like the investigating officer, my recollection was that it was not long after the death of Neil Aggett.
Okay.
As the court pleases. Warrant, if we could now turn to paragraph 7. And in this paragraph, as well as paragraph 8, you make reference to documents from the first inquest record that are missing. With the leave of the court, I'd like to put it to you that there may be other documents missing from the first inquest record. And they are as follows. These would be pages 3,116 to page 3,518. And my Lord, if we were to place those page numbers into the record, they would sit between A 8.7 and would run up to A 9. We have yet to ascertain exactly what those missing pages consist of, but we will investigate further and make submissions to you on that score.
Yeah.
My Lord, what also seems to be missing and doesn't appear to be on the warrants list in paragraph 8 is exhibit B1.19. And in due course, my juniors will advise me if they can what the contents of the missing exhibits might be. Also missing is exhibit B1.43.
Yes.
And then in addition to the I think that might very well conclude the additional missing document. Let me just do one final check. I can advise the court that B1.19 is actually a photograph which was numbered P34. At this stage, we don't know what the photograph was of. I can also advise the court that B4.1.3, the missing statement of a Rick van Heerden, that apparently detailed the assaults made against Mr. van Heerden. Lord, I think the parties may have to make submissions to you, legal submissions in relation to whether the missing documents have any material impact on these proceedings.
Yeah.
And we will prepare short submissions which we will hand up, and if the court so desires, we will make oral submissions perhaps on Wednesday morning. I can tell you in advance, my Lord, that we will be submitting that even though it is most unfortunate that these pages from the record are missing, certain affidavits are missing, and most telling photographs of the crime scene and photographs of the post-mortem are particularly unfortunate. And my Lord, I recall from the Timel inquest that Judge Motley, in his judgment, when considering the same question, the impact on the proceedings, raised a disturbing question, because in that case there were substantial portions of the record missing. In fact, much of the police evidence was missing. Judge Motley did raise the question as to whether those portions were intentionally destroyed or concealed from the court. And I imagine, Your Lordship, that we may have to consider that possibility as well.
But do we know what is contained in those missing portions of the record?
My Lord, what we will do for our submissions on Wednesday is we will put up a document and we will describe what the missing contents might be. And I'd prefer to do that on Wednesday so that we can have our ducks in a row, so to speak.
Okay.
All right, my Lord, with your leave, I'll proceed.
Yes. Well, you had initially in the question put it to the warrant officer that there are more missing documents than what he has indicated, and those are the ones that you've detailed.
That's right.
Well, I have not heard his response, whether he agrees or not, that there may be more missing documents.
It may be more, my lord.
You agree?
My Lord, I think what the parties ought to do, perhaps at an appropriate time, is come together and agree on a definitive list of what is missing.
All right.
And hopefully we can do that at least by Wednesday. Warrant, if we could turn to page 13 of your affidavit.
Page 13 or paragraph 13?
So that would be...
Paragraph 13 or page 13?
I beg your pardon, it is paragraph 13.
Yes, thank you.
Actually, I beg your pardon, it doesn't seem as if the affidavit has page numbers, so that would be paragraph 13. So, Warrant, you say that during the course of your investigation you ascertained the whereabouts of the following police officers who were directly or indirectly involved with Dr. Aggett during his period of detention. In your view, as the investigating officer, would you consider all of these individuals to be necessary witnesses for these proceedings, and indeed those who have not responded to the subpoena, that they should be tracked down and brought to court?
I think there will be more if you can track down some of the witnesses that can come forward. There might be more on that list. That can be, if you can be able to trace other witnesses, or if other witnesses can come forward, then the list it can be more.
No, the question is, are they necessary witnesses?
Yes.
Thank you. And the reason I ask is because we've just done a quick survey of which of these officers testified before the first inquest and which officers didn't. So, my Lord, just for the purposes of the record, from what we can gather, the individual by the name of Adonis did not testify in the first inquest, and neither did Hendrik van der Merwe, or the individual with the name of Van Sale, or Constable C.J.J. Smith. And I see that individual has suffered a heart attack. We hope that he recovers in time to testify.
Who's that?
That's, it seems like it's Constable C.J.J. Smith. It says contact made, suffered a heart attack.
Okay.
Paul Erasmus, luckily we're aware that he has been contacted and he is cooperated. Were any efforts made to trace Warrant Officer McPherson, who was in charge of the second floor cells?
Yes, that's correct, ma'am. Then I could not have any records on Warrant Officer McPherson.
Okay. So at some point well, perhaps we can just confirm for the moment that you're unable to trace him and you're unaware whether he is deceased or not.
Yes, that's correct, ma'am.
But if he was deceased, you should be able to locate those records.
That's correct, ma'am. Because with the ID number, it's easy to check if from our profile that is deceased or still alive.
I see. And you do have his ID number?
That's the ID number is missing from Warrant Officer McPherson. That's the point that we are struggling to trace.
I see. So, in actual fact, because you don't have his ID number, you have been unable to do a computer check on whether he is alive or deceased.
That's correct, ma'am.
I think we do need to redouble our efforts, and particularly to perhaps ask the police headquarters to recheck their records, because he was quite a prominent role player in these proceedings. He was stationed at John Foster Square over several years, so I must say I find it hard to fathom that the police would not have his personal details, including his ID number.
So if he's retired, he must be receiving some benefits from the state coffers, is that? And is there no record about it?
There's no record about it.
Whereas if you could turn the page and deal with this file of police officials and legal services SABC. That would in fact sit under your paragraph 15. So you have indicated that of the total number of files that you requested, some 24 files, you did receive some 8 files. My Lord, with your leave, I think I should read into the record the names of the individuals
Yeah.
whose files are still missing.
Yes.
And Warren, correct me if I do make a mistake, but according to our quick analysis of your two lists, the missing files would be those of number 5 on your list, C.W. Lamprecht, number 6, J.E. Lloyd, number 7, C. Mahoro, number 8, D.D. Mahoney, number 10, J.S. Marais, number 11, A. Martin, number 13, D.G. Westhuizen, number 14, J.C. Pretorius, number 15, L.C.P. Prince, number 16, C.S. Schultz, number 18, J.J. Stein, number 19, J.C. Strauss, number 20, A.A. Strubich, number 21, T.J. Swanepoel. Significantly, my Lord, number 23, S.P. Whitehead, and number 24, D.H.P. Zealy. And my Lord, we wish to place on record that it is a little disturbing that the majority of these police files are missing. And we think, my Lord, if the court is agreeable, it may be necessary to call somebody from the relevant police department. It could be legal services, or it could be the state archives, or both.
Can you just explain what do you mean the police files? What does it contain? Their personal information. What is it contained in their files?
Well, aside from personal information, if it was only personal information, then it wouldn't be of that much interest to us, my Lord. But in fact, it includes a complete record of their careers as police officers.
Oh.
So the cases that they were involved in, and importantly, my Lord, any complaints made against them, sometimes complaints of assault, as well perhaps of criminal charges that may have been laid against them, and any cases in which they might have been accused. And through our experiences in the Timor inquest, we gleaned extremely useful information from those police files, and that is why we were anxious to study them carefully, and we believe that in a court search for the truth, the contents of those files ought to be examined, and if a majority of police files are unavailable, I believe we need to hear from the SAPS why so many files are no longer available for our inspection.
Whitehead's police was still alive until last year.
He was still alive until April last year.
So his files should be available.
Indeed.
So you intend subpoenaing the head of legal services? Or?
Well, my Lord, I think we need to consult with the investigating officer and our colleagues for the state as to who would be the best person to subpoena. But we do believe somebody needs to come to court to explain.
Yes.
And my Lord, I'm indebted to my many friends from the state because apart from McPherson, the name of Arthur Benoni Conrad appears to be missing from, well, his name does appear on the list of deceased, but when it comes to personal files, his name is not on that list. And of course, as the officer ultimately in charge of the Aggett investigation, we would want to see his file as well. Warrant, any reason why Conrad's name doesn't appear on the list of files, either found or missing?
I did make a request of all the names. Maybe I might left Conrad's name on the request list, ma'am.
Okay. If we could ask you to include Mr. Conrad in your further investigations. Warranty, in relation to the 8 files that you did receive, and those are listed under paragraph 16, no need for me to read those into the record, you've done that already. You mentioned that you were given the original files, which you then copied, presumably on the photocopy machine at police headquarters. Are you in a position, no doubt, to certify that those photocopies are true copies of the originals you were given?
That's correct, ma'am.
And if we could then proceed to your paragraph 17. And it's in this paragraph that you set out your efforts to secure files belonging to detainees and deceased persons from National Archives. And then in that paragraph you then set out the files that you actually did receive, from 1 through to 17. And my Lord, my junior has just alerted me to the fact that the name of Lom, the officer who took the statement from Neil Aggett on the morning of the 4th of February, that her name is also not reflected on the files requested.
What is the name?
Blom.
Blom.
I believe it was a Sergeant Blom.
Sergeant Blom.
Sergeant Aletta Gertrude Blom. Her married surname is now Visser.
There's somewhere where I saw the name.
Yes, so her name does appear in paragraph 13.
Yes.
In relation to the list of individuals subpoenaed. We'd also want to look at her police file if it's available.
She's still around.
Yes, she is alive, and hopefully she will be testifying.
You say that she took the statement from the deceased on the 4th of February.
The morning of the 4th of February in relation to allegations of assault and torture.
Yeah.
During the course of the proceedings, we will revert to that important statement.
Yes. I see now it's 1 o'clock.
I beg your pardon, my Lord, I
Yes.
lost track of time. Would this be an appropriate time to take the lunch agenda?
Yes, yes. We shall do so. Court adjourns until 2 o'clock.
All right.
My name.
Can you go see?
I know.